Hi everyone, welcome to this special edition All Australian Rush Roundtable. We're coming to you from Down Under today to talk about Rush fans' experiences in Australia. So I'm your host, Suzanne. I am a bit of a cheat hosting this because I am an expat, so I did come to know Rush's music while I was in North America. I have lived in Australia for 21 years, coming to you from Geelong, Victoria today. And we're going to go around the call and see who else we've got with us. So first I'm going to start with Josh.
Hi guys, my name's Joshua Batten. I'm calling from Melbourne in Victoria in Australia, about an hour out from Suzanne in Geelong, and I've been a Rush fan now for about 12 years. So passing on to Liam.
Hey all, my name's Liam. I live in Geelong, so also another person coming from Geelong. I've been a fan since about 2016, so a bit of a newie, so yeah, and pass it on to Jimmy.
Oh, so yeah, I'm Jimmy. I'm the only person who doesn't live in Victoria here. I'm from Brisbane, which is the capital of Queensland. And I've been a Rush fan for about the same amount of time, since about 2016. So yeah, around the last 5 or 6 years.
Great. So I find this really interesting because the three of you have sort of come to Rush a bit newer. I started listening in 1989, and that was well before pre-internet days. These days, it seems like you can find anything on the internet. But how would we describe, Rush doesn't seem to have much of a profile still in Australia, even with them being on the internet. So how did each of you kind of get into them and find out about them if they weren't getting a lot of radio airplay or there wasn't any other way around? I'm going to actually start with Jimmy on this one.
Mine's a bit of an interesting way, I guess. So there's a YouTube show that I watch. It's called Game Grumps, and one of the hosts on there, his name is Dan Avidan, and Rush is his favorite band of all time. And he's a musician himself, and they've released a few cover albums where they did some Rush covers. The first cover album they did, Subdivisions and Madrigal. So that's how I kind of heard about those songs for the first time. Like I heard the name Rush a couple of times before that as I grew up, but didn't really know about them. So yeah, I kind of heard the songs from that. And then I sort of just kept listening to those covers. I didn't get into the actual band for a while, but then I think about a year later, I started getting into it. And then I just dug deeper into the rabbit hole, just listened to all of the most popular albums like Moving Pictures, 2112, Permanent Wave, Signals. Actually, I think Signals was the first album I ever listened to, and that became my favorite and still my favorite today. And I ordered CDs from the Rush website. And yeah, that's basically how I became a fan, just over the internet pretty much.
I can really relate to the Signals album simply because the song Subdivisions was the one that did it for me. When I realized what that song was about on the Show of Hands album, I thought, this is the band for me. This band is singing about my existence and what my life is like, and similar sort of thing. Yeah. Liam, how about yourself? How did you get into it?
Okay, so I'm a record collector. Like I'm massive, been doing it for about 5 years. And I think I got into the band also as a musician. I play keyboards, I play drums, I dabble in a bit of guitar as well, but the first song I ever learned fully on a keyboard was Subdivisions by Rush, which at the time I was quite new to the band. This was like maybe 2016, 2017. When I actually got into the band, it was like, cool, this song actually sounds really cool on the keyboards. I'm going to discover more about this band called Rush. So I just went through all the popular albums, Signals, Moving Pictures. I even started pretty much with the underrated stuff. So Grace Under Pressure, Power Windows, all the 80s stuff. And the first box set that I think I got from them was Sector 3, which had all the synth-led 80s material. And those were kind of my first ever albums for those ones. So that's how I really got started, was through that.
I kind of wondered, because you're a keyboard player too, like if you had more of an attraction to the synth era, which is a bit controversial amongst some Rush fans, isn't it?
Yes, it is.
Absolutely. And Josh, your story.
Yeah, so I've been a music fan pretty much my whole life, but I started really only with the music that was passed down to me by my parents and a couple of friends around me. So I grew up listening to a lot of Fleetwood Mac, ELO, the Beatles, Queen. And I'd say aside from Rush, the Beatles and Queen are probably my top 2 favorite bands still. But then there was this time kind of around middle school when I kind of focused on academics and no one was really showing me any new music until I kind of discovered Pink Floyd around 2009. And through that, I think a few of my teachers started showing me some stuff from Yes and from the early Genesis. I knew the later Genesis. And around that time, I got myself a Nintendo Wii for the house because I'd heard a lot about this game Guitar Hero, and I was really I'd kind of rented it out for the PS2, but I'd never had like the full kit. And the latest game at the time was Guitar Hero 5, and they had like a full band, and like I just wanted nothing more than to spend my time playing the songs on the game and just getting better at it. And so I think I got like a few games at once. And this would have been the end of 2009, beginning of 2010. And so Guitar Hero 5 was the latest in the main series. And there was a very mixed bag in terms of music on there, everything from Nirvana to Gorillaz to Government Mule to The Killers. And then the final song on the game, as in like the kind of final boss battle that you have to beat to actually finish the career mode, is actually a live version of The Spirit of Radio from 1980, the one that's on the Permanent Waves 40th anniversary box set. Of course, it wasn't released at the time. At the time, it was like a Vault edition. And I knew nothing about the band. I heard like the little sample of the chorus, and I thought this thing just sounds way too wacky. It's probably like some 5-piece American band with a chick singer from the 80s who had like the hair, the crazy hair. But and of course I went to play the thing on the guitar. The first thing you have to do is that, and I was completely out of my depth. So I switched over to drums thinking that would be easier. Of course, I think I barely got through on easy mode on that, but just by kind of hearing the song just through there, and the same with a lot of other bands through that, and also through importing Rock Band, because Rock Band 2 actually didn't come out in Australia. We had to get that on import, but that one had the trees. And so through hearing those 2 tracks, I then did a little bit of research, and I started noticing their name coming up a lot more, I guess, in music magazines and on some websites and stuff. So once I realized I could name all the members with ease, I downloaded the greatest hits compilation, The Spirit of Radio, from and listened to that entire thing on a trip from here up to the snow. And this would have been like mid 2010. And I think by the end of that trip, they had become my favorite band, and I was absolutely, and from then on I was pretty much obsessed with getting as much Rush in my life as I could. So I was
luckily there's only 3 members, to remember, in terms of I love that you mentioned Fleetwood Mac, because there's only one band I've listened to longer than or a couple bands I've listened to longer than Rush, and Fleetwood Mac was the first one for me.
Fleetwood Mac was my first concert when I was 8 years old, actually.
Oh, that's amazing.
Yeah, and that was my choice. Yeah,
that's great. But I also consider the other 2 bands that I've listened to longer than Rush are Genesis and Yes, which in ways I think primed me for Rush, right? So that, to me, that's the trifecta is Rush, Genesis, and Yes.
Absolutely. I think when I started listening to those bands, I was a little bit more concerned about, I was more focusing on the clock and trying to see like how much longer has this song got left to go. And I think because Rush only have a handful of songs that cross the 10-minute mark, as opposed to Yes, and where like every second song is 10 minutes or more. I think that I found it a little bit more accessible. And of course 2112, which is really it's really more 6 songs in one sitting. So I think that was a great entry point for me to get more into prog and into a lot of the bands that I absolutely love now.
And how arrogant does Rock Band or Guitar Hero make us that we think, yeah, I can play like Neil Peart, just go along. Like I think I've only played one of those games once and was trying to keep up and went, yeah, right, drumming's hard. But that's probably not the best drummer to start your drumming with.
Yeah, because it was only after that I went back and remembered, because School of Rock is one of my favorite movies, and after that I remembered and went back and when I heard the name Neil Peart, a penny dropped. I'm like, oh, there's that scene in School of Rock where he gives the CD to the drummer. He says Neil Peart or Neil Peart.
I know he mispronounces it.
Yeah. He says study up, and so
It's like
I
a
did study up.
2112, right?
Yeah. So
and did you guys, and you've mentioned a few of these things, and Jimmy, you were sort of mentioning you'd heard Rush before. What were you finding Rush was kind of seeping in through other ways through the culture, like they've been mentioned on South Park and Family Guy and all this stuff that is quite popular in Australia? Was that some other ways you guys were hearing of the band or hearing their music?
I think I heard those references more so after I got into Rush. But I think I just heard the name Rush drop time to time with like my friends, because like I'm a musician myself and I'm surrounded by musicians, so they'd drop Rush or Geddy Lee every now and then, but just didn't really stick in my mind as much. But yeah, that's sort of how I like kind of heard about it externally before I really got into them.
I find if I'm around musos, that's usually who, it's either expats or musos. Who react to Rush. And it's always been one of my jokes too, like, because I used to manage a band in Sydney, and we'd be doing sound check or whatever, and I would yell at the other bands, play some Rush, right? And the sound guys would all laugh like, yeah, as if, or the band would be like, come on, we're not that good, like, and just this respect for the musicianship, even if you don't like them, just, you can't deny the musicianship of them individually and collectively is so. I wanted to ask too, and I love that you're the only one, Jimmy, wearing a Rush t-shirt. Shame on the rest of us.
I have mine here. It's just too tight because I bought it when I was like, I bought it before COVID.
Ashamed for wearing this. I had to throw out a King shirt in my pocket. I forgot to drag that out.
I have too many Rush t-shirts to choose from.
Do you order them all from overseas?
Yes, I think all of them were from overseas. I have like seen a couple in shops, but I already had those shirts because I got them online. So
that's amazing. Mine are all ragged with holes in them and things like that. But but I'm curious. I know there's been 2 occasions where I've just seen someone walking by on the street with a Rush shirt, and I just have to talk to him. And for me to see someone with a Rush shirt in Australia, like it's not as an unusual thing in the States or in Canada particularly, but when it's in Australia, I'm like, okay, are you visiting or are you an actual fan? What's your reactions either when you're wearing a Rush shirt and someone sees you, or you see someone in a Rush shirt? Are you just attracted to go up to that person and start gabbing?
Absolutely. For me, yeah, because I go to a lot of gigs, I think I don't really see as many, but certainly when people see me wearing, this is all before COVID, but whenever I was wearing my Rush t-shirt out and about, it would certainly be a conversation starter. And especially because Rush never toured here, there was I had to get by with the next best thing. So I would go and see Yes and Dream Theater and Stephen Wilson, and wear my Rush shirt there, and that would start a conversation. And I think my questions were always like, how long have you been a fan, and have you ever traveled to see them, and everything in between. And I'm pretty sure there's at least one other fan in my area, because there's every day when I walk to the supermarket, which is about a half-hour walk, I pass a car with a YYZ number plate.
Oh yeah.
And Jimmy and Liam, do you have similar experiences?
For me, being in regional Victoria, not many as Rush fans as in the metro. So it's kind of hard to spot the Rush shirts across the place. So I'm kind of really the only one really representing Rush in Geelong until probably today. Thought I was the only one. Like, I got this hidden ability just to make myself unique. So I've not really had much experience of going up to someone saying, oh, you're a Rush fan, let's exchange some conversations.
But you still are unique in that you've had to become a fan while in Australia. So like I said, I'm cheating a bit being an expat. So you can still have the honor of being the Geelong Rush fan, Liam, absolutely. And Jimmy, you were going to say something there?
Yeah. So like I always get like super excited whenever I see someone wearing a Rush shirt. I don't have the confidence to go up and approach them, but it's always really cool to see. I have had people come up to me whenever I wear a Rush shirt. Like I remember one time I was just about to take a train. I was just at a station. I was wearing my Power Windows shirt, And so some older guy just came up to me and was like, oh, that's an awesome Rush shirt, man. We just started talking about Rush. He told me he'd seen them overseas. He saw them at the at R40 or something like that. And that's like most of the conversations I've had. It's like just talking about Rush, and they've actually seen the band, and I've never seen them, which is depressing. And another time I remember as well, because I study audio engineering, and I remember on my first day, I was wearing a Signal shirt, and some other guy noticed that, and we started talking about Rush. And the next day he came in wearing a Farewell to Kings shirt. I was like, this guy's awesome. And we're good friends now. So
it's
yeah,
the version of
it's
the version of the secret handshake, isn't it? It's like, you know,
Literally.
wearing the Rush t-shirts. Similar, it was actually when Bruce Dickinson did his book tour a couple of years ago, and I went to see him at the Palais Theatre in Melbourne. And there was a poster up for Dream Theater coming to come play, and I saw this guy walking towards it, and he was wearing a Rush shirt. I think it was Snakes and Arrows. And as he walked past me, I just said, man, no one in Australia wears Rush shirts. And he swung around, he went, tell me about it, right? And like, we just ended up gabbing. And I saw, and he was an expat too. But I happened to see him again after the show. And so we stood there, and I think this was in wintertime, because we stood there outside for like an hour and a half in the cold St. Kilda wind, talking Rush, like a straight 90 minutes. He had pictures of the band on his phone, and just, it was just incredible. And there's just something about someone gets the nerdiness about it. Like, so someone else just sort of understands that. But you brought up a really good point there, Jimmy. The three of you, have any of you, Josh or Liam, have you gone overseas and had a chance to see them?
No.
I've been overseas I've been to America a few times now, but never, the timelines never crossed. I think the first time we went over, they just finished Time Machine, and I'd always kind of hoped that, you know, that the timeline would work out. But by the time it came to R40, I was in my second year of uni, and there was just no way I was going to make it over either on my own or with my family, because I always go with my family. And even though I get a lot of my musical influence from my dad cannot stand Geddy Lee's voice. He can appreciate the musicianship, but he's not a fan. But
your dad and I cannot be friends. I'm sorry.
Oh yeah, yes, no. Well,
sorry, Josh's dad.
He likes everything else though. But like he loves Styx, he loves Kansas, and I guess that got kind of the whole American prog thing. But so no, the closest I got, I guess, was I went on Cruise to the Edge in 2017. And I played in the Late Night Live Prog Jam, and there I got to play Xanadu with some other people, and watched a number of other musicians play these songs, and basically just got to connect with all these people. So never. I almost botched one of the closest other time. I think a little anecdote was I was auditioning for uni music degrees at the end of 2013, beginning of 2014. And there was one university where actually in the next room over, there were some students rehearsing songs. And I almost botched my audition, which, by the way, part of the audition was YYZ, but I almost botched it because I immediately heard Limelight coming from the next room, and I couldn't focus on the questions they were asking me. I just wanted to go into the next room and watch them play.
It's like a moth to the, you know, to the light bulb.
It's a bug electrocutor.
It's Rush. Yeah. It's Rush. I have to go. You know, I love how you're very respectfully too saying YYZ instead of Z, as we probably a lot of people in Australia would call that. And Liam and Jimmy, you guys both said you got into them around 2016, right?
Yeah,
which kind of missed it by a similar story with me and the Police. I didn't really start listening to the Police until 84, like after they had all broken up and things like that. But so it's often been the routine of, you know, Rush fans coming together at those concerts. And Josh, you've kind of mentioned some substitutes, although I don't know if those other bands would appreciate being called the next best thing. But Liam and Jimmy, like, how do you get your Rush fix? Is there other rituals or ways you get together with fans?
For me, really, it's collecting all the sort of live concerts I picked up when JB Hi-Fi was still doing Rush stuff. Yeah, surprise. I got the DVDs for Time Machine Tour and Clockwork Angels. And I've got all the tapes from back in the day of all the 80s material. So Exit Stage Left, Through the Camera Eye, Race Under Pressure Tour, and the Show of Hands concert.
Yeah, because I think it's worth pointing out for our international viewers that even though Rush, I guess, don't have much of a presence in the mainstream, that they do still have Australian distributors like Atlantic still had like Australian pressings of their records, and during that period from 2002 to 2015, all their DVDs were put out through Eagle Rock, and Eagle Rock was distributed in Australia through Shock Records. So we got local pressings of Rush and Rio, Snakes and Arrows Live, and Time Machine, and so I actually came across Snakes and Arrows Live. That was the first Rush DVD I bought. I found that in a secondhand record store in Paran, and took that home and basically just made an evening of it. Like, I just sat down and watched it like a movie, and that's pretty much what I did for every DVD since, to the point where when Clockwork Angels came out and when R40 came out, of course I had to get R40 imported because there was no local pressing for that one. But I actually did organize viewing parties and just put out the call on social media. And I think at the time I was still running the We Want Rush to Tour Australia Facebook page, to little to no avail. But yeah. But no, through that I was able to get like some people along and have an evening of it. And yeah, to me, I just see it as like like a new Tarantino film coming out. It's
with less blood.
Yeah.
Well, let's dig into this. Let's get into the big question: the touring, or rather the lack of. What do we know? And I'm going to turn to Josh for this, because I know you were kind of behind some efforts, and do I understand you may have even spoken directly with people at Anthem at some times about this?
Kind of. Well, so basically by the time they broke out in America and Europe, which would have been like 77, 78. So like we're talking the Farewell to Kings era. By that time, most of the popular music in Australia was had some kind of image behind it, whether it was glam rock or glam pop, or so by that time, like there was an early prog scene in the early 70s with bands like Pink Floyd and Yes and Focus coming out here. But by the late 70s, there was a show called Countdown, which was basically our version of Top of the Pops, which aired for 1 hour, I think every week or every night or something on the Australian Broadcasting Corporation, which is like free to air TV. And so that one was basically like a combination of music videos and lip sync performances. And it was very much about image. Like I think the two biggest tours of 1977 would have been Alice Cooper and ABBA and Kiss, if we throw them as well. Like Kiss are massive here. But like you look at Rush, who are these guys who sing songs about Tolkien, and wear kimonos, and it basically just wasn't happening. And so they were kind of pushed to the side. And even when they started to achieve even more success in America with stuff like Permanent Waves and Moving Pictures, by that time, it was still like they weren't necessarily in the public conscious in America enough for the Countdown people to take notice, even though Molly Meldrum, the host of Countdown, would go over to America and to Europe to interview these artists. He would only really focus on the people, I guess, who either he considered amazing or who the record labels were convincing him to check out. So it really was, that kind of a lack of acceptance from the mainstream that they had in America, it really had an impact on them all over the world. And of course, Australia is such a small market because there's only 5 major cities. And by the time that people in Australia, I guess, were kind of starting to connect through internet and really starting to appreciate the music, and there would have been enough people who actually wanted to see them live here, by that time they were already doing the evening with shows in America, and they were doing the arena shows. And despite a few attempts to get them out for what would have essentially have been a run of theater shows, squeezing their entire setup into theaters for about 2,500 to 3,000 people. By that time, the band just wasn't really into scaling down. And I think Neil in particular didn't want to do the long haul flights. I think the closest they ever got was Japan in '84. And I don't think they had a particularly good time with that one. But
it's funny because we know they've been here as tourists, right? Alex,
yeah, and that was all pretty much after the fact. Like Geddy came out, I think, a few times as a tourist, and he even interviewed Bob Daisley, I think, for his book as well, just flying to Australia for 24 hours and going back.
but even like because like back in the 90s, I know that Alex came down to tour the Reef and things like that on a break, between some albums, and undoubtedly Neil has cycled somewhere in Australia. Like you can't.
Well, he's got a few Australian fens that he talks about in Ghost Rider. Yeah.
You can't be a world traveler and not want to go to Australia. So it's a shame that it could have never been a tour and holiday kind of combo package for them. But similarly, that's kind of been my feeling too. Is I grew up. I mean, I've been to like 300 or 400 concerts in my life, most of them in North America, in these 25, 30 seater arenas, which is really that's the kind of venue Rush played and worked very well at, with notable exceptions like in Sao Paulo and down in Brazil and things like that. But yeah, you kind of really, it's either you're at a pub or a theater or you're in a stadium. There kind of isn't a lot of that middle arena here. And like you were saying,
there's Rod Laver and there's the basketball stadium, the basketball arenas all over the country. Yeah, like we're talking, like it would have been a struggle to fill even those. Like,
and such great distances too. Like you say, there's 5 cities, but they are massively spread out. It is not easy to go. Poor Perth, I think, gets left out a lot in Western Australia.
Yeah, it's like when a band tries to do like a 10 city tour of the entire North America, or I guess like what Transatlantic and Neil Morse have been doing like the last 10 years. They have to fly to each city rather than take a bus. Yeah, because I think Melbourne to Sydney by bus is like 2 days.
And I'm wondering too, and especially for Liam and Jimmy, if Rush could have come out, like say on that final tour, they could have come out, and you were kind of into them, maybe if they were still touring in 2016, would you want to have seen the full show like they see in North America, or would a compromised version of Rush have been satisfactory?
I think anything would have been okay, honestly. Just the fact that they would come down, I think I'd be more than happy with. And even if it was a compromised set, it'd be all of their kind of more popular songs, which I'd want to hear live anyway. Anything would have done, I think.
Yeah, same. I would have been the same. Just anything.
Yeah, because you forget, like by the time they were finishing up, like just the tours just got bigger and bigger, and it's not just all we see on that stage is just those 3 guys. But you forget there's people like Howard Ungerleider, there's the whole Ray Daniels operation, and there's a whole crew of people that they really can't tour without. And for a tour to be successful like that over here, it's they've got to be like Queen level. And as popular as Queen are, it's just Rush is pretty much just in a league of their own. So
I did always the first show I saw, I'm not trying to rub things in your faces, but the first show I did see was on the Presto tour, because that was the first tour after I got into them. Right. So that was 1990. And then I prided myself on, seeing every tour. Moving to Australia in 2001 really slowed that down. So, and look, I only made it back for 2 tours, which was Vapor Trails and Time Machine. But you got the flight over, unless you got people you can stay with, the accommodations, it's more than just the price of a ticket, which these days, you're talking several $100s for just a decent ticket. So, and then you've got your exchange rates and everything. So it actually is an immense hardship to go from Australia and go over. So, yeah, we'll never know what could have been, unfortunately. I wanted to ask too, the three of you are musicians. Can we
Yes.
speak a bit to how's Rush directly influenced your music? Let's start with Liam on this one.
All right. Well, let's see. Neil's a massive influence on my drumming. I don't think like 95% of my drumming directly comes from him. My aggressive, progressive style, sort of complex drumming definitely comes from Neil, hands down. No one else.
And you're a multi-instrumentalist, right?
Yeah.
So in terms of keys, guitar, bass,
Yeah.
influences there as well, or it's mainly Neil?
I'd probably say Neil
Mhm.
heavily.
Yeah. Jimmy, what about your stuff?
Yeah, Rush is definitely the main band that influences how I play and everything I write. I would say Alex Lifeson's definitely my main influence for guitar, but like the more I listened to Rush, the more I got into Geddy and his bass lines and how he played the synth and the keyboards. Because like I'm mainly a guitarist, but I got into bass because of Rush. So I started learning, I think the first song I learned was The Big Money on bass, which is very difficult to play. But yeah, that's pretty much how they influence my music. And that's like with songs that I've written, they're not online or anything, but they definitely influence the structure and like the kind of chord progressions I play and stuff like that. And I've done like a few covers for like projects at university as well. So it's like deeply rooted in everything I do music wise. Absolutely.
That the instrumental break in Big Money, there is just a mad bass drum interplay.
I love it.
In that
Yes.
song that just sends me to the moon every time I hear it. It's
I love
just,
seeing them play it live on the Show of Hands tour as well.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
just so good.
Yeah, I still
love
think
it.
that's quite a standout concert video. That one. Some of the ones that came after kind of had different things that were good about them, and then the R41 I think is another really high standard video, the way it's editing. And Josh, and your music, Rush's influence.
Yeah, so I've been putting out music under my own name for the last 5 years or so. I've got an EP, an album under my belt, and I'm in the middle of working on a concept album inspired by the pandemic's effect on mental health. And in all of them, and I think the overall Rush influence has been just getting a little bit stronger with each record, but it's always been there. Like I think it was the kick up the back I needed just to actually up my game as a songwriter and as a musician. And the two things I could point to, well, firstly, I think as Jimmy said with Alex Lifeson, he's very underrated as a guitar player. Like the thing, like if you think about just how many guys were, how many guitar players were chugging away and doing these power chords that were really just kind of, they were trying to compete with the drummer, I guess. Whereas Alex always kind of played around the drums with these arpeggios and these sus chords. And that really made me live my game, even as an acoustic guitar player, because I do so many acoustic gigs. And Dad's always saying, well, we want to hear your voice as much as the acoustics. So sometimes I have to not just play the chords and try to mimic the drum line. I got to actually just let the chord ring for a little bit and just sing over that. So in that respect, yeah, Alex is a huge influence. And then, of course, Neil Peart as a lyricist. Like I was, because when I got into Rush, I was a hopeless romantic. I could never find, I guess, I was always striking out. And then, and every song just seemed to be about like how great it is to be in a relationship, like literally how sweet it is to be loved by you, etc. And then
That's
and then
that's that
Neil,
Fleetwood Mac influence, isn't it?
I guess so. Yeah, you go your own way.
Yeah.
But then but like listening to the way Neil would actually tell stories with his songs and sing these songs about like Tom Sawyer's really about just a guy who just lives his life and is going about and is resilient no matter what. And I think that kind of message really related to me. And then especially Subdivisions, like me being like kind of the social, not pariah, because I was trying, but novice, I guess. Yeah, that absolutely, I connected to that. And so from then on, I stopped trying to write kind of songs that would work as rock songs and would sound good in a stadium or on a stage, and rather just try to write stories that were personal to me and that that was basically, it was a way out for me, an outlet for me to express my thoughts on the world.
It's I find it interesting too, because a lot's made about Rush being the suburban band, you know, that their lyrics, especially I'd say in the second half of their career, because the first half was very fantasy and escapism, although that was metaphor, obviously for a lot of personal things that people could feel. But and we've all kind of mentioned how we really relate to Subdivisions, and that is such a growing up in the anonymous, you know, North American suburbs and kind of being invisible and being a bit of an outsider. And I wondered for you guys as Australians in the environments you grew up in, like, does it have the same impact, or, you know, how do you connect specifically with the lyrics, or have you ever heard something and it's maybe you're not quite clear on the reference of it, or does it transcend? Because it's a bit deceptive, Australian culture and North American culture. They seem very much the same on the surface, but once as someone who's been living here for 20 years, you start to notice the differences. So I'm just wondering if it's rung the same with you guys.
I would say so. I think all the themes that like Neil kind of writes about are kind of universal. I feel like, especially like, as you know, Subdivisions is kind of universal against all kind of, you know, outcasts, I suppose, and stuff like that. And especially like with albums like stuff he talks about, like in Signals and Hold Your Fire and stuff, it's stuff that I can really relate to from like past experiences. So yeah, I do feel like it's very universal. I think that's what everyone kind of loves about Neil's lyrics. Yeah, it's very universal. Yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of it was kind of my Bible and my guide to life for a while, just those songs. And like the first Rush song I heard that had the word love in it was Entre Nous, but it's not really an overt love song, as it's really just about the difference between two people and how two people who have these differences can still be friends. And I'm finding that out now, especially as the world opens back up and people have these different opinions on things and different interests, and just that leave room for you and I to grow. Me being an impatient bugger in life, that's a good lesson to go by. So Entre Nous, and I did an interview for a book of local musicians in lockdown, and I specifically quoted those lyrics. And yeah,
it's interesting as you get older, and Liam and Jimmy, you'll experience this one day, that you know, things that you heard, you know, when you were in your early 20s or teens strike you quite differently as you're older. And I mean, I was 18 when I first started listening to Rush. I'm 51 now, and it's still a very bright, burning love affair for me with Rush. But yeah, those songs about growing older, like a song like Time Stands Still, that has a very different meaning to me now than it did before. And just, you know, they say there's a Rush song for everything. Like you can there's always something happening in your life, you know, that can relate to that. So
I was going to say as well, like specifically the song Losing It on the Singles album kind of relates to me a lot. Definitely as a musician, but just for anything I do in life, you know, the lyrics started to let it die or something. What is it? And then better to have lost it or something like that. I can't remember exactly, but, you know, just going out, it's better to try and do things rather to just kind of sit and wonder what could have been, I guess. It's definitely a good motto that I kind of live my life by. I screwed up those lyrics, so I apologize, but yeah.
No, I keep coming back to, for me, Rush has always been too about, you know, what's the message of Rush? Be your own person, follow your ambition, be compassionate, you know, stand out from the crowd, you know, and I find a lot of comfort in that, because that's how I live my life, you know, and and when I'm on the outs or I'm speaking up about something and maybe it's not the popular opinion in the room, I just think back to those messages from Rush, and they give me definitely a lot of strength. So definitely that's good, to hear this. That's, that's definitely a universal message, isn't it? It's
Yeah.
always about optimism.
Yes.
Yeah.
I
Absolutely.
think Nobody's Hero is also another one that
Yeah.
you don't have to be the brightest star in the field. You can be as outcast as you want, and you're still a hero at the end of the day.
Pride of purpose in an unrewarding job. That's such a simple lyric, but it says so much, doesn't it?
Yes.
Definitely. I'm just kind of keeping my eyes on the time here, guys. We are kind of sort of coming to the end of our time, and this has been a really incredible discussion. Any closing comments or other things that we want to say to our massive Rush family around the world?
I think it's the strength of the family around the world that has enabled the community here, as small as it is, to continue moving and actually have something to talk about.
Yeah, especially having like this Rush fans page is definitely an amazing outlet for that. Like Ryan was saying before, it has like 50,000 followers now or something. It's just such a great way to link everyone around the world. Definitely, social media and all of that, and the internet has really helped bring Rush together globally.
Yeah.
So it's great for that. Absolutely.
Indeed. I'd say the same. Pretty much what we all said pretty much brings the whole family together. Family. At the end of the
Fantastic.
day.
Yeah. Look, I've really enjoyed talking to the three of you and getting to know you a bit better. So my heartfelt thanks to Josh, Liam, and Jimmy. And to everyone who's been watching, thanks for watching this roundtable. If you've enjoyed this video, please subscribe to Rush Fans. Any other Australian fans, we'd love to hear from you. Let's hear some comments below. Do we want to promote other places we can see each other too? I think there used to be a Rush Facebook page for Australian fans, but that's kind of developed now into the Prague page, hasn't it?
Well, there's a prog group on Facebook, which I'm a moderator for, which is I think Progressive Rock Fans Australia and New Zealand. And I think the main aim when I started that was to try and get more and more people along to the gigs when the bands would come out, and that kind of died down a bit during the pandemic. But now that I think bands are starting to come back a bit and things are starting to open up, who knows? And even if there's no band, I'd love to try and do something like a RushCon where it's just fans meeting up. So.
Absolutely. Well, we're here. Reach out, find us online. You can find links to Josh, Liam, and Jimmy's music pages as well below. So thanks again for tuning into this roundtable.